Welcome to Breaking Par with Bernard Sheridan, the golf instruction podcast that helps you take control of your game. Now, here's your host, the founder of Par Breakers Golf Academy and certified Golf Channel Swing Fix instructor, Bernard Sheridan.
So, Tony, thanks for being with us today.
My pleasure.
So tell us a little bit about the program that you have. I know that, I just gave a brief introduction before we went on the air as to that it does involve the mental game, but give us a little bit more depth into, one, how did you get started in this, and two, what are the main topics that you're touching on this program?
I've been coaching as a PGA pro over here in the UK for somewhere around about 30 years, and around about 15 years ago I kind of decided for my own personal benefit that the coaching I was doing wasn't working quite as good as it could. It was great and my reputation was very, very good, but I decided we could get results more quickly. So around about 15 years ago I just decided to change what I was doing completely, and I got far more involved in personal development, so the sciences of things like NLP and hypnosis and personal development. I did crazy things like you walk on fire and bend bars and break wooden doors and all that kind of stuff, just to really understand what was possible for a human being. And it led me into looking at the person, and I started coaching people rather than coaching the golf swing. So it's more coming from the individual and the skills that they actually possess, rather than me having all of this information that I had to kind of implant in them so they could find their way of developing their golf swing through the information I was sharing. I decided that they had the skills already. It was my job to kind of draw those skills out based around the simple principles of swinging a stick and hitting a ball. So that was it really. So kind of my world changed somewhere around about 15 years ago. And then 2 years ago, I met the guys from MindFit Limited. And I was in a position where I was about to have to do some serious academic research to prove why my process was working so well. I met Neville Gaunt, who's the CEO of MindFit, and he introduced me to their programs, which were very much based around the idea that getting people into the mindset that you can actually do it. Whatever that you want, whatever it is you want to apply yourself to, you can find a way to do it if you apply yourself with the right mindset at any given moment in time. And I realized from reading their books that all I was doing is helping people understand that they could just do golf. I think Nike have got the great saying, just do it. And we certainly believe that people can just do golf as long as it's explained in a way that they understand, in a way that they can translate it into their own language, simply, quickly and easily. That isn't to say that they're going to be successful very quickly, but at least they'll understand the process they need to go through, which is going to help them to understand exactly what they need to do.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, I believe that the world is perceived by each individual a certain way in their mind. And if they can have a certain mindset of that they can conquer anything, then they pretty much have that faith, that inner faith, and they're able to do it. And that makes a huge difference in life, as in golf, as in pretty much any endeavor that you're trying to achieve. A lot of the times, I think, and I heard that you mentioned that a lot of these people, they have these skills, they just don't realize it. And I totally believe that too, because I think that most people think that they need to find something or they need to be taught certain specific things. And you were mentioning in the beginning of your comment that you, after a certain period of time, you were teaching just the golf swing, and then you started to teach, you knew that they had those skills, and then you started to hone in more on how to get their mindset correctly to get those skills out and to bring those skills out in what they naturally were able to do. I'm sure that you probably saw a huge acceleration in how your players were advancing. In a period of time, they were probably advancing a lot quicker, correct?
Absolutely. Purely and simply because I think the biggest challenge we have certainly within the golf industry, I am aware of other industries now, and you quite rightly said there, Bernard, it's very much a case of it's sport, it's business, it's life, it's education. We've got to help people. They've got these skills. Let's help them discover what's possible for them. And it's really, really important that in the golf industry, people take golf lessons. Unfortunately, there's lots of myths out there where people take lessons, they think they're going to get worse before they actually get better, and they're reliant upon the golf professional to share with them some kind of golden nuggets of information which they're going to take away, that they're going to help them to improve when they stand there on the golf course. And when that doesn't work, the poor old golf professional then gets a sting in the tail because the golfer then believes that golf coaching doesn't actually work. And I decided that, for me anyway, that wasn't good enough. And I was sharing great information with people, and I wanted them to improve, and they wanted to improve. The point was they had to take some responsibility for what they were actually doing as well. It wasn't all down to me. So I had to find a process where I could share with the golfers some information, and they could take that information away, and they could continue the learning process between coaching sessions. And then the coaching sessions just became part of the process where we could establish where they'd moved from the previous session, and then begin to build from what they'd learned in between times. And that could mean that was on the driving range, on the practice area, or actually out on the golf course. Because the best place to learn this game is actually out on the golf course while you're actually playing it. Yet so much of golf learning is confined, as we believe, to what happens on the practice tee or on the driving range. And I think if we could find a process so the golfer could learn something, and we've got a motto, it's learning something from every shot. So you can take that forwards to learn something from the next shot, to learn something from the next shot. So there should be a progression, whether you're on the driving range, practice tee, or on the golf course. Learning something, so process is maintained, or progress is maintained as you go through a very, very simple process.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, it's there's so many more things that happen out on the golf course as opposed to the learning tee. You have all different lies that you're facing. You have all different types of shots. And on the practice tee, you really are on a level lie, and you're not really experiencing all the things that you're going to experience out on the golf course. So that's definitely a huge difference. And I know that when you mentioned too coaching is more, and at least here in the States, the way that we think about it, we think of a golf instructor is someone who teaches the swing, and a golf coach is someone who coaches all the facets of the game. They'll not just teach the mechanics of the swing, but they'll also look at the mental side of the game. They'll look at things that are happening on the golf course. They'll look at different types of drills that players can do. And then they're also there to help that student along when they have problems with other things that relate to the mental side of the game.
Yeah, and I'd say it's pretty much similar here in the UK. And I think that being a coach, or whether you want to call yourself a teacher or a coach, really to me doesn't make any difference whatsoever. What's important is we're there to help people achieve what is possible for them. We've got to be realistic about what people can achieve, but we've got to do it in such a way that it makes sense for the people we're actually working with. The associations that we're trained by, the PGA in America, and then the PGA here in Europe and in the UK, do a fantastic job in terms of educating golf pros like myself in information. But information's only usable if we can make sense of it all. I know I could stand with somebody on a practice tee for 15 minutes and it would sound like I was speaking a completely different language. Well, that is no use to anybody, only me showing exactly what I know. And I think what's important, if we look at the simplicity of the game, it's about transferring energy using your body and a stick into a ball. That's it. Just the same way a carpenter transfers energy from the hammer to the nail, and the nail gives him feedback. We need to train golfers so the golf ball gives them some feedback so they can learn from it. Whereas the basic principle at the moment is I've hit a poor shot, therefore I made a bad swing. If we keep doing that, we not only make a bad swing, but now we're a bad person as well.
Sure. So, and a lot of that is physical feedback, how the player perceives the shot, what they did. And I find, too, and you probably find the same thing with your students, that many players, when they try to control what's about to happen, their pressure on their grip tightens up. And when their pressure tightens up, not only does it slow the club head down, but it also does not allow the feel factor to transfer into the hands through the club head and up the shaft right into the hands. So now they really don't kind of know what they just did wrong or how to understand what they did wrong. Yeah. But if they can relax that grip a little bit more, then now they're starting to understand, same as you made the reference to the hammer and the nail. If I think of when I'm hammering a nail in, I'm not gripping that hammer as hard as I can, trying to get that thing perfectly square on that nail. I'm kind of relaxing, I'm feeling the head, and I'm letting the head do the work for me. And I'm also not doing it as hard as I can. I'm not swinging as hard as I can. And a lot of people, I think, at least, and I'm sure it's the same way no matter where players are playing or where they're taught all over the planet, our human nature is a tendency, if we want to hit it farther, to try to swing as hard as we can.
Yep.
And but if we can kind of ease back a little bit, get some feel, we can actually get that club head moving faster. And then when we do kind of make a poor strike, then we can better feel where was that strike. Was it closer to the heel? Was it closer to the toe? How and what was the effect of the shot by the ball flight, and really what just happened through feel. I think that so many of us, we have to incorporate all our senses in not just visual but also auditory and feel, and let that be part of what we do when we play on the golf course.
Absolutely. We swing the club, we feel the contact first, we hear the sound, and then we watch the ball fly. Unfortunately, most golfers watch the ball fly, and by the time they've watched the ball fly, they've realised they didn't learn anything from what it sounded like or what it actually felt like, because they go into this emotional state where they're already beating themselves up about what actually happened, and the learning opportunity becomes zero. What we need to do is get them to raise their self-awareness for what actually happens when they swing the club, when the club makes contact with the ball. What did it feel like? What did it sound like? What did it look like? And from those elements, we can then begin to apply some simple principles based around simple physics. You know, Newton's laws of motions are pretty much set in stone. You apply a force in a certain place and an object will move in a certain direction. The golf ball will stay at rest until a force is applied to it. Now, so the club head applies the force. Physics is physics. That golf ball is going to tell us quite simply exactly what we need to know. I know we've got amazing gadgetry now that can measure ball flight, the likes of your TrackMan and FlightScope, GC2. There's all these fantastic computers that can measure it. The amazing thing is, though, that the most powerful computer on the planet resides between our ears.
Very true.
So we're measuring things with something that isn't as powerful as the brain we've got in our heads. Now, if we look at the skills we've developed by the time lots of people get into golf, we've developed some amazing skills, from being able to walk, run, ride bicycles, skateboards, rollerblades, all of these things which take amazing balance, and we don't actually think about doing them, we just do them. If we could take that same feedback we gain from, if I'm riding my bicycle and if I lean too far to the right, I fall to the right, and if I lean too far to the left, I fall to the left. Somewhere in between is where I need to be. But nobody can tell me where that place is. I have to discover it for myself.
That's an excellent example, and I know too that I think that well, most of us when we go to ride a bike, we're children. So when we fail when we're children, we usually don't beat ourselves up about it. But when we fail as adults, especially in golf, a lot of times we take it a little bit too personal and we beat ourselves up. So as for the mental side of it, if we kind of embrace it more as a child, and just look at what happened and give ourselves a time to process that information, and not immediately go, "You stink," or beat yourself up, or "Oh my God, what are you playing this game for?" How many times we hear people do that? So if we can kind of, just say, "Hey, you know what? What just happened, and what can I learn from this?" And it's not like I shouldn't take this personal. I shouldn't, because there's going to be bad shots. There's no doubt about it, no matter how good of a player you are. And to worry that your playing partners think you stink, or they're going to make fun of you, or that you're any less of a person because you hit a bad shot, it has nothing to do with who you are as a person. And I think that so many people let that interfere with them progressing and getting better, as opposed to, and then again, and as we get back into a little bit earlier in our conversation, it's the same in life. I mean, think about every time some people, they're like that. Every time they're not succeeding, or they might listen to the naysayers, "You can't do this," and then they believe they can't do it. Then they tell themselves they can't do it. But the ones who are the ones who achieve their goals are the ones who are always saying, "I can do it." And then when they don't do it, what they say is, "Okay, what can I learn from what I just did so I don't do it again? Because that was a fail. So I'm not going to take a fail as that I'm a failure. I'm going to take the fail as I can learn not to do this again, and to try another way around it." Thomas Edison said that you can have 100 failures or 1,000 failures until you might finally hit the right thing. Now, he failed 1,000 times before he figured out how to make the light bulb. So essentially, if you fail 1,000 times, many people will quit long before that. So, would you say that in the teaching that you're giving on the mental side of the game, is that part of what you're doing? Is you're trying to let students understand that failures are not something that is bad. That failure is actually good. And in order for any of us to learn, that's part of the learning process. We're always going to fail. I mean, that's how we learn.
Absolutely. And I think golfers, certainly the amateur golfer, gets conditioned to watching golf on TV, whether it be on the European Tour or the PGA Tour, and they see these guys hitting great shots. They see these guys, hitting the fairway. They see the guy hitting the green. They see the guy draining the putt or holding the bunk shot or pitching in or whatever. But the TV coverage is limited, unfortunately, to the guys who are cluttered around the top of the leaderboard. Or as it's been latterly, let's go and watch Tiger and see what's happening with Tiger at the moment. But he seems like he's beginning to make progress, and it'll be interesting to see how he gets on this week at St Andrews. But what the golfer doesn't see from watching the golf on TV is they don't see the guys who are missing the cut. They don't see the guys who are finishing 158th, who not necessarily whiffed it, but they've maybe hit lots of shots in the trees and the water. They've three-putted a few times. And even the guys that are cluttered around the top of the leaderboard, we don't know how that shot felt. we get an idea of the sound, and we only see the ball flight on camera. We don't exactly see the shape. And yet, because the ball goes close to the flag, it's assumed that it was a great shot. Well, I know from the era I grew up watching golf, Faldo was the big hero here in the States. And when Faldo was at his best, he was saying it on a good day, he hit no more than 5 or 6 great shots in a round of golf. There's a guy who made 18 pars in a row in Muirfield to win the British Open and beat John Cook by a shot. And in that round of 18 pars, he's potentially only hit 6 great shots. Yeah, he's carded a level par, whatever it was, 71 or 72, and he's the British Open champion. And I think that the average golfer gets into their head that these guys hit great shots all the time. Well, I hit shots that look like the great shots all the time, but they're not always exactly what I wanted to do. But as long as it achieves something close to what I wanted, that's acceptable. And I think it was Johnny Miller quoted several years ago, your golf isn't about hitting great shots. Great golf is when your bad shots are good. And
that's right. He who misses the least wins the event.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yep. And Ben Hogan used to say he only used to hit 1 or 2 great shots around. So when you think about that, I mean, Ben Hogan was probably, I know that Nick Faldo was thrilled to death when he met Ben Hogan and spoke with him and had that opportunity because he looked up to Ben Hogan as the greatest that ever lived. And I think that many of us still do. And when we look at that and we think, here's one of the best players of all time, the best ball strikers that ever lived. And he only felt that he hit 2 perfect shots around, 1 or 2 perfect shots around. That's really true. That if you miss, you have to. We're all going to miss. So if we can make that miss closer to our intentional target, then we're going to be able to have another opportunity to get the ball close again, or maybe make that perfect shot that we were trying. I think that any one of us, we're trying to get the ball in the hole. And even if you're 150, 200 yards out, you're not thinking, I'm just trying to get it close to the flag. I'm trying to get it in the hole. A lot of people don't look at it that way, but what that does is they're just trying to hit a green. But I always look at it this way. Jack Nicklaus used to say, when he chose a target, he made his target as small as possible. He would pick not just a tree, he would pick a leaf on the tree and try to hit that leaf. If he missed the leaf, he would still hit the tree. If he chose the tree, he might totally miss the tree, and now he didn't hit his target at all. So that's again, too, in the mental side of it, that fine-tuning of understanding what you have to do to fine-tune what you're about to do, and actually let your brain focus on what has to be done, but don't over-focus it too. That's a big thing, right?
Absolutely, because invariably what happens is a golf. Let's think of a simple situation. We're all sitting at home, we're watching TV. We want to go and get a drink out of the refrigerator. Okay, so we have the thought about having the drink. We don't then think about how to stand up out the chair, how to walk into the kitchen, how to open the fridge, how to take the can out of the fridge, how to open the can, how to then walk back into the living room to sit down and then take a drink.
And not spill the drink at the same time.
And not spill the drink, absolutely. Absolutely. And so what's important is we have an idea. So what is that idea? Okay, once you've had the idea, now let go of it.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful.
Now let's commit. Now let's trust where we are. I say a lot to my clients, the golf swing you have right here, right now is perfect. And invariably, if it's the first few times they've met me, they all look at me a little bit puzzled. So the golf swing you have right here, right now is perfect. And the reason it's perfect is because it's the only one you've got. It's better than the one you had last week, and it isn't the golf swing you're going to have next week. But right here, right now is what you've got, and that's all we've got to work with. You make a swing, you hit the golf ball. I can share with you 3 questions that will help you understand what happened, which may allow you then to change something over the next shot. So you can learn something from every shot you're actually going to play. And when people get switched onto it, they realize it, actually, I'm not doing a great deal, and my brain's working all this stuff out, and all I'm doing is giving it some simple instructions to help me understand exactly what I need to do. Now, sometimes we might have to make a physical intervention, but invariably the golfer can begin to process their own thoughts, their own ideas, their own constructs and concepts to achieve exactly what they want to do. Not because I'm so good, because they have the ability in themselves right now. It's such a refreshing way to coach because the pressure's off me, and I'm not heaping pressure onto them, but they're realizing that they can do it, and I kind of act more, or the golf coach or teacher acts more in a supporting role, building them up when they need building up, giving them that support when they need that little bit of support, much like our parents did when we fell off our bicycles when we were children. I fell off and hurt myself. I didn't want to get back on that bike, and so my dad encouraged me, picked me up, got me sat back on the bicycle, and I was off again.
Sure, and that's the only way that you can learn is to, when at first you don't succeed, try again. And so many players get into the mechanical part that it becomes paralysis by analysis, as opposed to allowing some freedom and working with what they have right now. There's nothing wrong with trying to better what you have and do maybe some drills or things like that to maybe fine-tune it and get it better. But like you said, the swing you have at this moment is the swing that you have to work with. So if you want to play the best at this moment, in the here and now, today, then you have to embrace that part, and you have to let go of some of the other things and let your body do what it knows how to do, and not try to get all tied up in mechanical thoughts, and not try to steer the ball or not try to over control what you're doing. Just relax and let things go. Now, with recently, you're coming out with a book. Now, are you going to release that book in the United States also? Or Absolutely. What is your thoughts of that? And because I know that a lot of our listeners are going to want to be interested in getting their hands on some of this material. And a lot of we do have a good amount of listeners in the UK and around the world. But the bulk of the listeners are here in the United States. So how can they get some of that information? What's the best way for them to get that?
What I hope to be able to do, we just the book's been kind of released at the moment to a small amount of readers here in the UK, was to gather some feedback. The book is combined research of around about 60 years, and the title is interesting, and it's certainly got a publisher very interested over here in the UK, and it's called Intelligent Golf Clubs, Honest Golf Balls and You. Now, if we look at what happens, a golfer is part of the team. He has to work together with that team to create his round of golf. Intelligent golf clubs comes from the fact that each golf club has a job to do. The 7-iron knows it goes further than the 8-iron, but not as far as the 6-iron. So the guys who've created the game for us have created the ideas of lofts and lies and shaft lengths so that we can, with one particular movement, we can produce lots of different shots. Now, as we develop in the game, we can also get more creative with other shots we can create. We can then hit the ball lower into the wind, or we can hit the ball higher downwind with a particular club. But essentially, the golf clubs have an intelligence built into them. A golf ball is honest. We go back to Newton and the laws of physics. You apply a force to something, it moves in a certain direction. Your golf ball or my golf ball or any of the listeners' golf balls will only fly where they send them. You don't swing the club and the golf ball, once you've made contact with it, decides I'm going in the trees on the right or the water on the left, or occasionally I'm going to fly straight down the middle. You applied the force. You were responsible for that swing. And if you keep making that swing, that ball will keep flying right, left, or straight. Because the swings are different. A swing that hits the ball to the right side of the fairway is different to a swing that sends it to the left side of the fairway. The skill is in the golfer developing and understanding the nuances between those different swings. But the margins we're asking them to work to are really, really fine. And several years ago, I had to find a way to help golfers understand how close they actually were to hitting a good shot. And what I did was I had a piece of graph paper. My daughter was doing some geometry homework. I drew a golf ball on the piece of graph paper and drew a line through the centre of the ball. I scaled it out to 150 yards. I then picked a spot 1 millimetre off centre and then drew that through the middle of the golf ball to 150 yards. So I now had a right angle triangle. And if you're 1 millimetre off centre, at the moment you hit the ball, assuming the club is travelling in that direction and square to that point, at 150 yards, you'll be 6 yards off target. I thought it was pretty good. If you could get accurate within 1 millimetre, you're doing a pretty good job. A dimple on a golf ball, I don't know if you've ever measured the size of a dimple, Bernard, but when I ask that when I do my stage shows in the UK, most golfers say I've never measured a dimple. On average, a dimple is about 3.85 millimetres. Let's call it 4 millimetres for the sake of arguing. If you're now 4 millimetres off centre at 150 yards, you're now 24 yards off target. You've missed the green, you've missed the fairway, you're in somebody's backyard or in the pond. How could I give somebody something to think about so as they were making their downswing, they could feel that 4 millimetre difference in the downswing whilst the club head's travelling in excess of 60 or 70 miles an hour? Impossible. So we have to rely on the honesty of the golf ball. If I apply a force to the right-hand side of the ball, it goes left. If I apply a force to the left-hand side of the ball, it goes to the right. Somewhere in between, it will go straight. And I believe the golfer can work that out for themselves. So if we've got intelligent golf clubs as the first step, honest golf balls as step 2, that leaves one key ingredient of the golfer, of the golf game, and that's the golfer themselves. And they get to choose what attitude they show up with, how they behave. So you talked earlier about their emotional response after they actually swung the club and hit the golf ball. You know, those attitudes and behaviours they display will have an influence later on in the game. If those attitudes and behaviours are positive, there's a very good chance they'll be successful as they go through their round of golf. If they're negative, they're going to have a negative impact on how they play as they progress through the round. So the book is very much helping the golfer to understand how to interact with the golf clubs and the golf ball so that they can get the most out of their golf game every time they go and stand out there behind every single shot. And if each shot isn't exactly what they wanted, they can learn something which will help them at a point in the future so they can make an adjustment. And the adjustment needs to be very, very small, but it isn't something they're going to focus on consciously. It's something they're just going to let happen.
Excellent. So for our Par Nation listeners that are in the UK that would like to have the opportunity to work with you in person, what is the best way that they can get in touch with you?
If they email me at golf@mindfitlimited, that's ltd.com, I'll be more than happy to take any questions. I hope to be able to get, by the time this goes out, get you a link also to a website so that you can go and read more about the book. There is a preview chapter available. If anybody wants to email me again, golf@mindfitlimited.com, I'm more than happy to send out a preview chapter which goes into the mindset section of the book. And we will have the book available. It's only available at the moment as a digital download. I will have a link for you and for the readers or the listeners so they can get hold of a copy. Retail price of the download is going to be somewhere about $9.99. That'll be pounds here in the UK. I'm not quite sure how that will work out in dollars. But yeah, we just want more people to change the way they approach their golf game, and see what benefits it's going to have in other areas of the life. Because as we said earlier, this is about sport, it's about business, it's about education, it's about life. The attitude and behaviours you display wherever you are at any given moment in time will have an influence on your performance. The great thing about that is you get to choose your attitude and your behaviours. Nobody else does.
Well, that's the beauty of being a human being on the planet and having free will. And we have to be able to use that free will to our advantage, not to our disadvantage. We have enough people trying to put us down, or I want to say the naysayers, that we don't want to be our own naysayer. We want to be positive influence on ourselves. So, Tony, it was absolutely wonderful having you as a guest. And we'll get all that information out for our Par Nation listeners. We'll have that information in the show notes, and you can click on that link or email Tony yourself. And then if you do that, I'm sure that Tony will be happy to send you a link as soon as it's available. And then, of course, he'll send it to us, and we'll try to get it on the show notes as soon as it's available. For the listeners who are out there right now, we're taping this show. All our shows are taped, and it's being taped on the week of the British Open at one of the greatest golf courses that there is on the planet, St. Andrews, and we wish all the participants all the luck that they, and of course, me being from the States, I'm pulling for Jordan Spieth to make number 3. Such a fine young man. And there's a guy who is doing exactly what you're teaching, Tony, is he's really a positive influence on himself, and he's staying, and he's working with what he has at the moment, and he's really getting the most out of what he can at this moment. And that's why he's doing so well.
From watching his display at the Masters, I didn't get to see him too much at the US Open, but certainly watching him at the Masters, the thing that stuck out, and I kind of tweeted and Facebooked about it afterwards, was his attitude and behaviour around the golf course was phenomenal. He just stood up there, he did what he had to do. Each shot was an individual shot. I think too many golfers go out and think about the 4.5 hours they're actually out there on the golf course. A round of golf is made up of a series of individual shots, and the golfer has to show up great for that first shot and show up great for the last shot as well. And they need to compartmentalize them into those individual phases. And if they can do that, then they can begin to get the most out of their ability at that given moment in time. I'd like to congratulate Ricky Fowler, because Ricky just won the Scottish Open over here at a great golf course at Bullen, which is just across the Firth of Forth from St Andrews. So I'll be interested to see how he carries that form on into next week. I watched the final round, and he was swinging it fantastic, especially with certainly over the weekend, the wind got up, which it's likely to do this week at St Andrews as well. So I think we've got a resurgent Tiger there as well. He's the last tournament, he started to put some rounds together, which is fantastic, and I think the game certainly needs him. I think a lot of his challenges are certainly mindset challenges in terms of his mental game. Physically, I don't think you can fault what he's doing. I think he should work a lot more on his own rather than working with coaches and get feedback from other people. It's just a big pity that Rory won't be there this week, having got ankle trouble, having a kickabout playing soccer with his friends. So it proved to be interesting this week at St Andrews, and it's been great talking. And like I say, I'm sure I'd like to share more time with you again, Bernard, because it's been excellent, and we'd like to share what we've got here in the UK with golfers around the globe. The great thing about the game of golf is it surpasses the language barrier. Because if you hit the left-hand side of the ball in America, in Asia, in Europe, the ball will always go to the right. And if you hit the right-hand side of the ball, it will always go to the left. Because physics is physics wherever you are.
That's true. We can't change it. We're all on the same planet, and the only difference is that sometimes we're just a little bit further apart geographically, but really we're all just on one big planet, and everything acts the same. And I think that people act the same too. And if they all do what we're talking about here today, they'll definitely improve their game. So Tony, it was great. Until we meet again, what we always like to say here on Breaking Par is try to keep it in the short grass. And I'm sure that if they follow your instruction, they'll do so much more often.
Thank you very much, Bernard.
All right, take care.
Have a good day.
You too.
Cheers.
Breaking Par with Bernard Sheridan is brought to you by Impact Zone Golf Academy, located at Tiburon Golf Club at the Ritz-Carlton Golf Resort and Impact Zone Golf World Headquarters, both located in Naples, Florida.